You can just continue. Okay, record, I'll let you know. Fine.
Can I do?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Litzinger. I'm from the Texas Higher Education Coordination Board's Advisory Council for Post-Secondary Education for students with IDD. It is 10 a.m. Sorry, it is 10:11 a.m. and I would like to call the July 25th, 2025 Advisory Council for Post-Secondary Education for students with IDD meeting to order. This meeting is being held via Zoom and in person at the Higher Education Coordinating Board's offices. Before we begin, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome those that have joined via video conference and ask everyone to adhere to the following etiquette. Please be aware that although we are meeting via Zoom, this meeting is still being broadcast via the internet. Please mute your microphone when not speaking. Always keep your camera on. The THECB staff will establish a quorum through a roll call. Each member should identify himself or herself prior to speaking for the record. Please wait for one person to finish before speaking. Otherwise, comments may become muddled or unclear. And our motions will be voted on by roll call. Thank you. And now Cheryl Williams will call our roll.
Okay, when I call your name, please respond to confirm that you are on the call. We'll start with our presiding officer, Linda.
Present.
Aaron Banger,
I'm here.
Brenda Barrio, Jackie Benestante, Christy Watson Gibson, Kristen Gooch, Christina Gashanis,
Here.
Abby Hughes, Letitia Lasota,
I'm here.
Susan Maraska,
She just emailed she can't get the Zoom to work.
oh, okay. Thank you. Ed O'Neill,
Yep, present.
Christine Price,
Present.
Jolene Sanders, Sabrina Gonzalez Saucedo,
Present.
Tamara Chatron,
Present.
Beth Stalby,
Present.
Laura Villarreal, Lauren Woolfolk, Nina Zuna.
Present.
Turn the meeting back over to the presiding officer.
Thank you all. We have some additional guests today, and I would like them to introduce themselves, and I'll go across the screen. Let's see, Kylie Yarbrough, can you tell us who you are, please? You've been such a big help on our report.
Yes, my name is Kylie Yarbrough. I am the graduate assistant for the Bobcat Rise Texas State IPSE program. I work under Tammy Chatron, Dr. Tammy Chatron. helping with whatever was really needed to be done for the report.
Thank you very much. You've been very helpful. Melinda, Paninsky is going to speak later today. Would you like to introduce yourself now?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yes, Melinda Paninsky with the Texas Workforce Commission Vocational Rehabilitation Division.
Okay. Thank you. And Cheryl, do you want to introduce yourself? Send anybody else from THCCB or? Cheryl, too?
Sure, I'm Waylon Matoy.
Sorry, Waylon Matoy, I serve as the Director for Student Success here at the Coordinating Board.
We're so glad to have you all here and all your help. Cheryl, do you want to say?
Sure. I'm Cheryl McWilliams. I'm a program specialist with the Texas Higher Education Coordinator.
And is Zane here yet? Can you tell me? Then I'll move on. Okay, our next agenda item is to adopt the minutes of April 4th, 2025. Do we have any questions before we vote?
For the record, we do have four.
Thank you. And by the way, we have form. Thank you.
Linda, we have one other visitor to introduce herself, Marissa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Yannicone, and I am the newest policy analyst at TCDD. I'm excited to be here.
Welcome. We're glad you're here. Thank you. Okay. And in the chat, Nina Zuna said she will need to abstain from the vote because she was not in the April meeting. Do I have a motion for adopting the minutes, please?
Motion to adopt. This is Christine Price.
Thank you. Second, anyone?
I'll second it, Zed.
Ed O'Neill seconds. Okay, Cheryl will call the roll for the vote.
Linda Litzinger,
Agree.
Aaron Banger,
Aye.
Christina Gushanis,
Aye.
Letitia Lasota, Edward O'Neill,
Agree.
Christine Price,
Agreed.
Sabrina Saucedo,
Aye.
Tamara Chatron,
Aye.
Beth Stalvey,
Aye.
Lauren Wolfover.
She's just put in the chat that she has no audio.
No audio.
Yeah. She says she agrees. Okay. Maybe she means she has no microphone.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. The minutes are approved unanimously. Okay. Would it be possible to go to my PowerPoint, please? Or item 4? You go down a couple, please. This one just shows what our three committees are and what they were charged to do and who our members are on the committee. And next slide, please. We can go back to this for this first slide if we need to refer to it. Okay, so in the past quarter, 3 committees have met, followed by building a draft that included their reports, and followed by Beth Stelvey creating recommendations, followed by Beth Stelvey creating an executive summary along with much more work from a final group of volunteers. At present, we have 2 main things to discuss and decide on, followed by many loose ends that members have emailed me after reading the document yesterday. So the first decision will be about the validity of the data. The count of autism alone seemed undercounted, but when you combine the data with every single possible disability, that also seemed incorrect. So Beth wrote something that incorporated Ed's caveats about the data and further feelings about the data. And Beth, can I call on you as we begin this discussion? Well, let me first show you these slides. This is the slide. The black on this slide is what Edward turned in, showing autism reflected in high school. And he had graduating years 2018-19 all the way up to 2022-23. The purple chart we added on the right because the benchmark was in play during this. 2018-2019 was the first year where students no longer had a benchmark and they could go seek a reassessment from their school and be diagnosed for autism. And the ASD spectrum was very often overlooked because it's an invisible disability. It's not blindness, deafness, mobility. It was the more invisible disabilities that could more easily be overlooked. And so if you were in grade 12 that year, probably you weren't going to get assessed for autism, and you probably had no school records to show to your college when you got there. If you were down at the bottom of this chart, if you were in 8th grade, it might be attainable to get records. But what was interesting is it was March of 18 when the decision was made to implement it in the 18-19 school year. And it was March of 20 when everybody went home from school to learn virtually because of COVID. So in that 2-year window when people could be reassessed, they were finding that there weren't enough evaluators in schools to get everybody done, and they were concentrating mostly on the lower grades. So we could probably look at this chart and say that there were a lot of things moving against these students as they got to college, and should have been able to say, I have autism and these are the modifications I've had before, but that didn't happen. Next slide, please. This is just an explanation of that. And I think you guys have this. I think I sent out this deck of slides in the night. So next slide, please. This is Ed's caveats for why this data may not be perfect. I don't, Ed or Beth, would you guys like to take over now and talk about the data we have all the charts coming up on this. Do you, either of you want to say anything about this right now? About which way we should go? Should we use it or not use it?
I mean, I think we have to use it, and I think that's kind of like what the conversations we had, with Cheryl and them, like, I don't think we have a choice. I mean, the legislation has asked for a report. I just think it's important to call out that, like, not only do we see limitations in the data, other people in this meeting have found like just overall limitations, but just like questions about how particular institutions were reported or represented, when it seems like they are significantly underrepresented or not represented at all. There definitely seems to be a lot of different limitations and challenges to the data that, I think cause question, but I mean, this is the data we have in the moment.
Okay. Can we, see the next slide, please?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Was the data collected indicative of students, at least on TEA's end, of students that were identified as having autism as a primary or secondary diagnosis, or just primary?
The data you're going to see going forward, most of it is not from TEA. It's from the Texas Educational Coordinating Board. So once students graduate from high school or leave high school, we no longer have the ability to really capture data. So
Yeah.
we get the year after exit stuff for the students that participate in surveys, but even parity between students that might go to a public university, there's even some issues with that data.
Yeah, understood. And then my
On
other
the high school
question,
level, the number was low because it might have been just a primary diagnosis.
gotcha. And then my
at the
other
college-
question,
The
oh,
other
sorry.
thing I was just going to say, like at the secondary level, the college level, it's whatever the student is reporting their disability to be, right? So if the student has autism, but also has like ADHD or anxiety or whatever it is, it's whatever they're reporting to their disability services center as the driver for them to get the services, which they may not disclose they have autism. They may not disclose the full battery of whatever they've been supported for before, either medically or educationally. So.
And then, Ed, if I'm correct, there is also instructions that once there is a self-disclosure that you should prioritize intellectual disability categories over autism categories. So if there is another diagnosis, then the reporting should be in the intellectual disability category.
Yeah, I would defer to the higher ed coordinating board on like what they actually look at as far as that. But I think that, I mean, from what I understand, seems to be accurate.
And Sue and I noticed that our numbers aren't recorded in these data, are not being recorded as well in this, in the data collection. So it is the best data we have, but it is flawed.
Sabrina, what were you wanting to say?
I was going to say that I really appreciate the reference to the 8.5% cap and how it's impacting our limitations of data. I was not around or working in the space when the cap was lifted, but I wanted to know if it is usually referenced as a benchmark, because I think this was the first time that I had heard it referred to as the 8.5% benchmark, and just wanted to know if folks had any opinion as to how we reference it to make sure that folks know what we're referring to when we talk about the 8.5% benchmark or cap.
You should say or cap after we say benchmark.
I think that's a question for TEA, but the notes that I have seen from TEA were that it was a performance indicator benchmark and not a cap, but was interpreted by school districts as a cap. But technically speaking, it was a performance indicator.
Correct. Yeah, and this predates me. I just know what the position of the agency has been, is the 8.5% was an indicator at the time under PBMAS, which is now referred to as RDA, or results driven accountability. It was an indicator to look at districts and their overall identification. The agency would posit the position that it was never a cap, though at times it was recognized as by the field and others as a cap. So.
Okay, thank you. Beth, do you want to share the paragraphs you wrote to show people what you had written about the data?
Sure. This was just a summary of conversations that committee members have had, as well as the comments from the data committee, in just trying to expand a little bit on some of the data limitations and some of the factors behind those limitations. And so I believe it starts on page 13 of the report, which I believe if you're in a Word document or PDF, it might be around page 18, just because of the title pages and things. But you'll see a brief summary of the performance indicator, the 8.5%. You'll see some notes about stigma and the recognition that families either are underreporting or really seeking services, and kind of how that plays into it. It does address the other issues we've just been discussing around self-report, and then trying to put into that section how folks are actually assessed or not assessed. Again, I think when you start looking at this higher education data, if you are relying on self-report, then you're not necessarily being assessed. I don't think there are requirements that are standardized across universities about assessment, about documentation, about any way to accurately identify someone with autism. And so we think that these numbers are very skewed. And so again, my attempt is really just as a scribe to try to put some of these issues that everyone has mentioned on paper before we start looking at these numbers. I would suggest that this group think about recommendations for how to improve the data, and maybe that has a role in this report, so that we can have some broader discussions with the agency and with the legislature about how this data is collected, if this is the data we think we need.
Thank you, Beth.
I'll just add, I think we also put in here, and we were hoping, and I think the Higher Education Coordinating Board did put some more information in about how the data is collected. We have heard from many on this committee that represent specific programs, that those programs are not represented. And then when those programs are represented, then the numbers are not what you would think the numbers should be. And so I think it is more of a question of that lack of standardization in terms of how definitions are interpreted at the university level, and then who is reporting that. Is it a broader university administration? For example, you'll see some numbers in here from University of North Texas. I think most of us here immediately think of, their LMR program and some of their other programs specifically for autism and individuals with developmental disabilities. The number that's reported here is about 1,900 students. And I don't think that UNT, those programs are not reporting 1,900 students in their programs. So it just raises a question as to where that number is coming from.
So I have a question for the higher ed coordinating board. I mean, obviously, and at the end of the document, in the smaller committee, we made some recommendations of like how we think we can improve the data. But I guess one question I have is at the K-12 level, obviously, like the agency has regulatory authority to require districts to provide data. Does the higher education coordinating board have, or do universities, community colleges, are they actually are there regulatory requirements for them related to data? Because, that was what I was thinking about this week is we can make suggestions, but like, does the suggestion really need to be that the legislation needs to consider, policy changes and potentially legislative changes, which will improve the data, not just kind of recommendations. Hopefully that makes sense, what I'm saying.
It makes sense. This is Christine Price, and I completely agree. I don't think the numbers are going to be captured correctly until it becomes a policy.
Because obviously for like us at the agency, like we require, as all of you know, like we require annual submission of data on, every summer. It's called the summer submission, PEAMS and TSDS. And that is actually the role of my team. We are monitoring enforcement complaints and everything else like that for school systems that do not appropriately report data or we question their data. We have mechanisms to like follow up and investigate that. But I don't think anything even remotely similar to that exists at the secondary level. So, or the post-secondary level, excuse me.
Excuse me, I'm only on the telephone, so I don't have a way to raise my hand. This is Sue. I'm driving, Sue Maresca. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Hello? Can you all hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, I'm driving. I'm sorry. My Zoom wasn't working this morning. I don't know why. Okay, I think I'm driving anyway. I'm calling, I'm Sue Maresca with Houston Community College. Okay, the reason that we found out why our numbers with Christine, with Austin Steps and Houston Community College Bath were not being reported is because when they're making the request, they're only looking at, because our enrollment person, who's in charge of our bursar, she's in charge of all of enrollment, Mary Lemberg, she's been there for like 40 years. She was even involved in the discussions when this first came about. So she's only going by what's being requested. I remember we discussed this before, Waylon. Whatever the report is that they're requesting C, if something starts with a C. Remember we went through this in one of our previous meetings, and it was only collecting credit semester hour. Anybody who would have that type of disability that is, that credit hour. It was not collecting continuing ed. And we are continuing ed programs, and we're very large, and we have a lot of students. So I'm just wondering if we can make some kind of recommendation when they make this request, because she knows maybe it needs to say if your college has a program, a post-secondary program for students with IDD or with autism, then they need to reach out to that particular program in addition to the numbers they're pulling from PeopleSoft, for example, with just students taking classes throughout the college, because that's what the problem is. She said if you had requested continuing ed, then they would have included our students that are taking our classes. So that's what was going on. And we didn't only discovered that this past year.
Maybe the policy could be changed just so that it collects credit hours and CEU hours as well.
Right, because these programs, we were one of the first, and we were part of this whole legislation to begin with. We were part of the effort to get the legislation, and they knew we were continuing our programs, but yet when they went out to ask the colleges and universities, they are pulling from students just out there taking classes, not attending a special type of program or continuing that. See what I'm saying? And now the newer universities, the newer ones, the newer programs are getting it right, because they're probably, when they get the report, they're probably thinking, oh yeah, we've got this special program right here at our college. Let's get the number. Ours is not doing that. Houston Community College is very large. So when they get that report, they're pulling in PeopleSoft and they're working with ADA, but they're only pulling students that are out there taking college. But I didn't see hardly any numbers from HCC. And I know there's a lot of students with autism out there that aren't even in our program that are out there taking classes. So I'm just kind of wondering, I've questioned many times with our person And she's insisting that whenever the request is made, that they are pulling the numbers through PeopleSoft and working with ADA, but they were only pulling the semester hour and not the continuing ed. So that was what was going on. And so therefore our numbers are not being reported at all, which is ridiculous because we were one of the first in the nation to have a program. We've been in for 35 years and we serve over 200 students and our numbers are not being reported. So we need to get it corrected somehow. Okay, thank you.
Also, when I talked to A&M this week, they're concerned. They have a lot of students with autism that are taking their certificate programs, agriculture, horticulture certificates, medical certificates. They're about to also do a veterinary assistant program. And they said they feel that maybe their ID population is being collected, but not their autism population in some of these certificate programs. So we have a lot of work to do to truly identify what's going on. Beth, can you share your paragraphs that you wrote on behalf of all of us that were talking, just for anybody that may not have seen them yet?
I believe it starts on page 13 of the document that Cheryl sent this morning.
Okay. Cheryl sent a document this morning. Okay. Are you on the Word document?
It is a Word document, yes. And again, it is a summary of the issues that we have just been discussing, which is the under identification, not just because of the 8.5%, but also because of folks who with level 1 support needs who might not have a formal autism diagnosis, and then that student is categorized or classified under other diagnoses like ADHD and other things. It talks about the cultural stigma of parents and families and how there's differences in how the diagnosis or the need for a diagnosis is perceived. And then, like I said, we talk about the self-identification at the post-secondary level and this lack of standardized reporting. And I think that what Sue just mentioned is how her university handles it, but I think all of you have described completely different processes. And so the point is that this is being collected so differently across every university and every institution, degree seeking, non-degree seeking, continuing ed, all of those things. I think that the question for this group is, data is never perfect. There's always some bias in the data, and but really understanding the methodology helps you understand, the accuracy of the numbers. And I just think the group needs to address how you feel about this methodology and submitting a report to the legislature with these numbers. They will look at these numbers and to what extent do they need to make policy decisions based on this data that we may or may not trust.
So the position of the rewrite was that we don't trust the data, and this is why we don't trust it, and this is what needs to occur to have better data and understand it well, which is clearly important because in the next year we'll be doing this for every type of disability at the college level, rather than just the autism spectrum disorder disability. Is there further discussion about this? Which way do you all want to go as a committee?
This is Nina Zuna, UT Austin. I agree with all the comments that were made and recommendations in terms of making recommendations, change the policy and the legislation to make sure that they are required, post-secondary programs are required to collect this data, changing the criteria to ensure it encompasses all types of post-secondary programs, you know, credits, continuing ed, certificate programs, non-degree seeking programs. One thing that we haven't discussed yet was having clarity in the definitions of autism, intellectual disability, developmental disability. But to the question of the issue that Beth raised about the legislature using this data to make decisions, I don't think would be in the best interest of this population. So I don't know if we should make a recommendation that we first need to improve these data collection procedures, the methodology, and then have the legislature make decisions based upon accurate data, because using this data to make decisions, I don't think would be justifiable. I mean, that's, you know, I'm just being honest that the data can't be trusted. So, you know, even with all these caveats, we
agree.
don't want them to take this data and make
second that.
decisions that aren't going to be.
Go ahead. I agree with what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I'm
How would
not
you all feel about saying that we're uncomfortable with the data, but including it as Appendix D so that they can see the comparison between the autism and the every kind of disability, and see how skewed the numbers are, how different they are from the high school graduation numbers. Would that be helpful if we did include?
I personally, I understand that the Higher Education Coordinating Board has an obligation to report the data that they are collecting. And so I think that maybe it is really asking for a more detailed analysis of how this data is collected and what the numbers are showing and really comparing it. I agree with Nina that anytime you report a number, then you don't know if someone has read all the caveats or understand how it was collected, or you just go to the graph and say, look at all these people that are in this program, you know? And I think that anytime you look at data, you can take it with a grain of salt. That's what you're supposed to do, in that there might be some variability or there might be some issues with it. But at what point is the data so skewed that the number is just nowhere near what it was intended to collect? And again, to Nina's point, what obligation does this group have to students with autism to be able to share data publicly and with our state leaders to make programmatic policy and funding decisions based on these numbers? Which your program, you were appointed to this committee and your programs are not represented in this data. I have such a problem with that.
Kendra, could you move to the slide that shows UNT Elevar being 10 times more than any other school? Please. It's coming up now. Keep going.
I think we should definitely add a statement that we believe the numbers need, or the data collection needs to be adjusted, and that these numbers are inaccurate.
Yeah, and this
Thank
was
you.
the first one that was raised the red flag with me, was the UNT numbers here, and then they weren't represented in the chart we're looking at on the right with students with autism. And then when we looked at the data that was just autism, they said there were 5 students with autism at UNT. And, you know, and that's clearly not correct. And I'm sure Brenda can speak to that.
Yeah. I
And
agree with
finally-
everybody. I can't see. I'm sorry. I apologize. I cannot see anything, and I can only hear, and I can't raise my hand. So I don't want to be interrupting, but I just wanted to say that I totally agree with everyone that just spoke. And I strongly feel that the same way. because we were the pioneers that had the meetings with Senator Zaffarini. We were the ones that came and made the presentation within college to the legislators, and our programs are not even represented, okay? So if they're going to collect the data and report the data, then I think there needs to be a statement until it's changed that says this data does not include Austin STEPS program, Houston Community College represent our college, because I know that
William
there
and Jeff
are
not on
other
here either.
students.
Let me
Yeah.
call on Waylon next, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I got just a few thoughts to share from my perspective and just for consideration. And I think one, Beth, you alluded to the obligation for the coordinating board to report the data. And that's factual. And granted, there are some concerns around the data, and that's factual as well. And it's very concerning. But I think we're at a state where I am more in favor of sharing the data that is there. Two parts. If the legislators want the data, they're going to get everything that we're proposing, that we have at the agency. So I think this is the opportunity to share the methodology and all the concerns we have around the data. So if we don't share it, what does that pose for the legislators to make a decision without any data? So I know there's no right reason there as far as not having the data or having skewed data in that regard. But if they make a request, or just like anyone else, make a public information request, they have access to whatever data that we have accessible to. So we can't hide this. But it is an opportunity for us to share the concerns, the limitations, and those sort of things with it. Now, granted, I think there's opportunity there where, the recommendations, whether if it's a policy or legislative mandate, I think there's also an opportunity where we can propose those changes with our data team and go to that board for approval with the commissioner and those sort of things, that we can possibly make some changes within the CBM reporting requirements to specifically strengthen and provide instructions to incorporate those gaps that we're seeing at this time. The other thing is that we're identifying ACC, UNT, HCC, that we're not capturing the data. But I also think there may be an opportunity. Tell us what that data is compared to what our data is. I haven't seen that in this report. So Christina, Nina, everyone that's working at an institution, tell us what that data is, whether, so we can put it in here to show how the data is not aligning to what is being shared. So some of those things, I think that would make it a little bit more valid in showing there are some concerns here. We're not included in this data by any means, but this is what it could look like. So there's a few things here, and again, I think both sides has very well valid points. It's just I'm at a position where we're at the last hour of the report to try to get it to be in a position of readiness for approval. And I think we can still strengthen the report by adding those conversations around the methodology or the analysis and those sort of things, to just let them know, this is our perspective, this is what we feel, this is what we recommend moving forward. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions, but I just wanted to share that for consideration.
Waylon, I think that was the intent of this section that is post-secondary programs in Texas. The current list that is in the report is not the final list. And so the intent was to create a list there, either the list that is, or probably the list that the Higher Education Coordinating Board maintains. And then if there are programs that are not on that list, being able to say, here are some other programs that are not tracked by the Higher Education Coordinating Board. And so then there is that opportunity that you just mentioned for programs either on the list or not on the list to describe their program, their enrollment, and some other key features. I think that was the intent. It just hasn't been updated, but I think that's a quick update. That's not a multi-day update.
Right, agreed. Thanks, Beth.
My other question
Kendra,
is,
please advance the slides.
can I ask one other question, Waylon?
Sure.
So yes, there are narratives in this report that talk about the caveats of the data. Would the Higher Education Coordinating Board be open to some additional notes on each graph? So like, for example, making a note here on this page where you say, please note, we don't think, this is not the program, and really just kind of putting, please note that that UNT is also not on the graph in the right, and they weren't included, like all the things that we've said about these particular numbers. If we were able to just put a note here so that when you are looking at a number, you have that right next to it, instead of requiring someone to go a few pages back and seeing those. I don't think it would be on every graph, but I think there's a few notes that could be made in the interpretation of these numbers.
Sure, I think that's possible. But I think it calls for a review with you all to show like where those notes should be, so we can make sure we support and align it with the final report.
Okay, let me summarize. Thank you. I think what we've heard is that we're keeping the data in the report, but we're also pointing out which schools are missing, which numbers, when the numbers are skewed, why one university may have reported more people and another one may have only talked about one of their programs, not all of their programs. Things like that, and recommendations for improving the data, even while we include the data. Is that what everybody heard too?
This is Christine Price. Absolutely, I agree with that.
Okay. Kendra, can you, let's keep going through these numbers here. Please, if you could scroll through all these bar graphs till we get to one past the bar graphs. Keep going, please. Yes, and then we'll get to the last bar graph I want to show you all. Go back one, I think. I'm looking for that one where it says with autism and without. Go back one more, please. That one, it's got yellow on it. Does any, the one you just had a second ago, that one. This one says post-secondary for students with autism. And then down below, it says with ASD and IDD. And we're not sure what that data is and which statement is correct. Edward, if you could help us with that, or Nina, we will need to resolve that before we publish. Okay, thank you. Kendra, can you go 2 more slides, please? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now this is from Higher Ed Coordinating Board's pages, listing all the colleges and universities. And then the university would have answered, do they have post-secondary programs available for IDD? And do they have support services available? And what is interesting about this list is that on the first half of this list, 3 of them said no, they don't have support services. And yet, they're state colleges, they probably accept federal funds, so they have to provide support services. Like Sam Houston State is a university, Lone Star College System is a state university, and Lamar State College Port Arthur. Those jumped out to me. I'm not sure what Dallas is above. They also said no. But that shows that maybe something didn't get to the right place on that campus in order to answer it. Next slide, please.
Oh, may I say something real quick about this? This is just a condensed pullout of that full report, if I'm correct, because our school was on that report and it's not here. Yeah, I'm wondering if there was just some confusion on how the questions are on whatever was sent out to get this information, because on ours, it says we don't have a program, but in the description of supports, it talks about our program. And I'm sure I wrote it. I'm sure
Right.
someone sent me something and I answered those questions. And then like A&M has nothing on their part. And then
Right. That's
Elevar
why I
has
said
this
next slide,
beautiful
please. 'Cause
write-up
this
of
is only half
Elevar.
the schools.
Yeah. Sorry about that if I jumped the gun.
That's all right. Kendra, can you go to the next slide, please? There we go. Okay, this is the rest of the schools. And you're right, A&M said no. Texas State said no. Texas Tech said no. And we know that they have programs. A&M has a lot of programs. So it's kind of difficult to post this in the report. So I want to show you the next thing we tried. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay. This lists the colleges. And it says, for example, Texas Tech has a degree seeking program and describes it. Then we get Houston Community Colleges. And then next slide, please. And I put the degree seeking programs first. Okay, Houston Vast is next. And University of North Texas, Elevar, which said 23 total, and Houston Vast said 150. So that bar graph that showed University of North Texas having 10 times more than everybody else just doesn't jive with what we're saying here. UNT Wise, and then there's one more UNT on the next slide.
Linda, one of the questions that we had for Higher Education Coordinating Board, and I apologize if I missed the answer, was do we know who is reporting these numbers? Are these the numbers coming from disability services, or where are they coming from? I think that the point here is that they're not coming from these specific programs that we are aware of, but they're coming from somewhere. So who is reporting, and where are the 1,900 people who are self-reporting autism and ID? Who are they reporting that to? Is that all I don't know the answer, but I think that would be useful to maybe put next to that graph.
Yes, and someone has explained to me these inquiries might generally go just to an IT department job where they maintain all the numbers for the school and just may not know how to pull out what we're asking for. Next slide, please. So we just showed on this slide Aggie Achieve at A&M. Kendra, can you give us the next slide, please? Okay, A&M has even more programs that are non-degree seeking. They have some health programs and some agricultural programs. They teach landscape management, floral design, and greenhouse nursery for certificates. childcare, school paraprofessional, and direct care support. And they're right now developing veterinary assistants. What they have been telling me is that their Aggie Achieve program is 4 years long. It's $240,000 to do all 4 years. And one would come out with soft skills, but no certificates, as compared to these 2-semester programs that give one a more solid career because of the certificate that comes with it. And so in that data that we reported on the bar graphs, we haven't got to this level of who's doing what. And I received some emails in the night about even using this chart, because some of the schools that we listed here for IDD are only for ID, and they wouldn't have anybody with autism in them. So the question at hand is, we have a chart on the THECB website that isn't quite accurate and misses a couple key schools. And we have this chart that we've been developing that we could use if we beef it up a little bit, correct a few things that people have emailed me. Is there one more after this, Kendra? Is steps the last one on our chart? Have you all noticed any schools missing? Go back, please. I think this chart started out being the 5 schools that were on the bar graph. And then we said, wait a minute, A&M isn't on here. And Austin Community College Steps isn't on here. Which way do you want to go in the report? Do you want the THECB chart or this one with a little bit of improvement?
Well, I mean, I know for certain for the UT Austin, I think they listed 132 students, and we only have 10 to 13 students a year. So, you know, I don't know where the 132 comes from for UT Austin. I'm assuming just the students that are, you know, enrolled at UT as a regular degree seeking student. Perhaps it's, you know, the autism students in the Longhorn Ties program, they get wraparound services. So we might say that the numbers, you know, will not align with these charts, right? The bar chart and these additional post-secondary programs are not going to align because they're 2 different sets of numbers. So we can either show them both and kind of make that comment that there's not alignment, because it goes back again to the data collection inconsistency.
And I think that I would be interested in using this new or more updated graph of programs that is more accurate than the list that currently exists and not touching it. I think that there are definitely programs missing from this list. And I also would like to be able to present the most accurate and up-to-date information that we have about the programs that do exist. I think noting which programs, I like that we're putting degree seeking and non-degree seeking. I think that we should also be putting which programs are CTPs. I think that that's definitely an important designation to be putting into this graph as well. But I would definitely be happy to contribute to this list of inventory of programs that we know exist out there. And there are definitely some extra programs that could be added to this list.
Sabrina, do you already have a list? Waylon's going to tell us that it was due last week. And so I think we have to decide how much can be done by yesterday.
Understood.
That was my comment too, Beth. Yeah.
Understood.
I know you've done a lot in higher ed. I don't know if you have a list you feel confident enough about, to add and kind of show the differences between, again, I think what we're showing here is what is collected. It's not a criticism of the Higher Education Coordinating Board, it's just what they're collecting. And then we're saying that there's some other real world information that's not being collected, and we hope that there will be some, you know, policy and programmatic direction to align those two, right?
I do not have access to a currently like list of programs. I know that I made one when I was at TCDD. And so I'd love to dig into my files to see if I still have access to that. But I think that off of the top of my head, I can reference some programs. And I also don't know if we should be including programs that don't currently exist. Like I know that Texas A&M is seeking to create or exploring creating a vet assistant pathway or program, but I don't know that I feel comfortable putting in a program that doesn't exist. I also know that Texas A&M has the Waco project, which is another non-degree seeking opportunity that's not on this list currently.
What does that do, Sabrina?
The Waco project is a 6-week summer opportunity for students that are interested in the HOPS program to come on campus and do soft skills employment training exploration. It's a partnership with their Brazos Valley Center for Independent Living. And so students are partnered with a job site and they're on campus for 6 weeks.
Thank you.
Linda, one second. I do want to make a point of clarification with this list that Linda just shared, because it's two different reporting. The data that we all receive that's in the tables and charts, that's through CVM. That is what your reporting officials at each institution is reporting. The program inventory is a collection of our annual IDD recruitment and program inventory survey that goes out to all reporting officials, disability contact folks. It goes to every president and chancellor at each institution, which delegates a representative to complete this survey. Unfortunately, just over the past few years, we have not been getting 100% participation rate from these institutions or updating these things. Now, granted, it has been a little bit, I'll say challenging for some individuals or representatives on the campus to get access because it was through like the CB Pass portal, which is separate from CBM. So I just want to make that clarification on that. And because of those challenges, we just recreated a new tool. It'll be Smart Sheets, a survey that has incorporated all these things, but now we can track the access of who's accessing, who's submitting, and getting all this information at a much smoother and more confidential confidence in the data that is being shared on an annual basis. So we can go back and reach out to those institutions that are not reporting any updates or anything. So we can ensure on an annual basis that these things are being collected, which is also incorporating a few additional details like CTP, what degrees, what certificates, and all these things that we have been talking about over the last few years because of the programs and those sort of things. This should go out to every institution by next week. It is just waiting for last seconds approvals to be communicated and outreach to all the institutions. So just know that we hope this is updated by, within a month from once it's released. So by the end of August, we should have that, but unfortunately it may not be soon enough to insert at this time in this report, but it will be available for like our report next year for the IDD access report. So
that's really great news. Thank you. Okay. I want to make sure we have time for our guest speaker, but in the meantime, do we have any further comments about the report that you all have been reading the last day?
I just want to, this is Nina Zuna. I just want to make one final comment. I appreciated what Waylon said about those different types of surveys, because I didn't realize that. And, that maybe explains why we're not getting some of the survey data from some of our programs. So I think it'd be important to have that summary in there because it does explain some of the gaps. And then what is, going to be done in the next month or two to kind of get some of this additional data? Is that something you can write up? Because I didn't understand those acronyms, CB Path, CBM, and those two different types of surveys and who it goes to.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Would anybody want to say anything about any other parts of the document?
Nina, in the
Wait,
report
Cheryl,
that was sent
know
out,
that we need-
in the report that was sent out this morning, there is an expanded section on the CBM data and how that's collected and what some of the definitions are.
Okay, thank you. I missed reading the brand newest report this morning.
Okay, anything else? Any other
I
questions?
think that, Linda, I think the group needs to spend some time on the recommendations.
Okay, let me see if I can share it. I was having trouble loading the report, but I think it's up now on my screen. Let me share my screen. Okay, this is way early, right? Right, you're talking about this paragraph here? That,
There's nothing shared just yet.
you don't see my screen.
It's loading. What?
Oh. It's reconnecting me to Zoom. Okay, you see it now?
It's loading. Yep, it's there.
Okay. Beth, is this what the paragraph you're talking about?
I believe so. It's the recommendations at the end.
I think this is earlier.
And I think there is a section of recommendations right after the data section. And so I don't know if that needs to be consolidated into one section at the end.
That had been my recommendation. Like we just
Okay.
included our recommendations, just understanding ours was kind of like a freestanding chapter, and had made the suggestion at one point before that this can be incorporated into a larger set of recommendations. We just wanted to make sure we documented our thoughts as we went through it. So no, there's definitely no need, unless the committee believes there is, to have like a specific call out for recommendations. I think it makes sense to have one so that people don't miss the second one or a second one. So, but that's our
I
design.
had consolidated your recommendations into this section, but I think that it got put back in the data section. So I don't know if that's just a minor edit.
It might have just been a version control piece too. So, but no, I'm completely fine having ours go into a more comprehensive one. Nina or Beth or anyone else, or you are Beth, but Nina or anyone else that have different thoughts.
I think more time teasing out the recommendations section overall would be wise. But I know that we also have wanted to have this done yesterday. So I understand time constraints as well.
I think we can do it right now, Sabrina. Let's go.
Yeah, I agree with the need for recommendations.
Do we want to walk through them now?
We can do that, yeah.
I can start. Let me find.
I think we're all like where I was reading them really fast.
There's not that many, and so I don't think it will take us too long. Okay, I'll save this question for after we're done with recommendations. The first one, increase reliability in data tracking and reporting at the institutional and state level. The Higher Education Coordinating Board should work with Texas colleges and universities to increase reliability of data being gathered and reported in the same manner across institutions. Specifically, HECB should seek consistent definitions to capture enrollment, full-time, part-time, credit, non-credit, and autism and intellectual disability.
I think the only comment I had for that one is it didn't call out the definition issues and how the instructions were unclear. It said autism or intellect.
It says seek consistent definitions. So do we need more?
Well, I think maybe on autism or intellectual and disability criteria, diagnosis, it didn't clarify that that's what it was referring back to, the definition of autism or intellectual disability.
How should that be changed? I think we just have to write them now.
I think just at the end, autism or intellectual disability, maybe criteria or something, just so they kind of know what it's referencing to.
Could this also be an opportunity to get at what Ed's question has been, which is, the difference between legislatively and policy created recommendations related to data reporting? Maybe a sentence along the lines of the legislature should explore opportunities to require the legislature should explore opportunities or should maybe tease out reporting requirements to assist in accurate data collection across universities or institutions of higher education.
Do you think there should be two recommendations, one for increased reliability within the agency, and then another that might ask the legislature to explore broader requirements and directives?
Yeah. I think it's totally two-pronged.
Easing them out reduces the likelihood of missing part of it too, when it's one larger thing.
I just wanted to add something about high school and autism rates. I don't know if this is coming up later, and I apologize, but I personally know so many people that have an autism diagnosis in high school, and then they don't receive services because the school deems it not an educational need, right? So they're never tracked. They maybe have other health impaired, or if they have ADHD, they might have a 504, but autism's not done, even though they have a diagnosis of autism from a professional. And so that group doesn't have the autism diagnosis officially through an educational purpose. And so it's not being tracked. And all those it's a lot of those that are not kind of denied any services, or a lot of them are going on to college, especially those level 1 students. So I'm concerned about the lack of capturing those people, even if we're saying, oh, had an official autism diagnosis from professional, will not receive services. Like some acknowledgement that there's more students with autism in high schools. So, and I see Linda said she had a problem with a mic. Oh, they've been muted. Okay. So, oh, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you now. So I just wanted to make sure that was captured somehow about the high schoolers with not an educational need. And the other thing I want to say, just as an organization that does information and referrals, those are the students that we hear from a lot. I just spoke to somebody, I don't want to give his exact age, but I spoke to parents of somebody who has a PhD from UT Austin, who is living at home, struggling in his job, has no executive functioning skills. He never receives services. And we hear that a lot. Like kids, young adults are graduated from college with autism. They have the academic ability. They're lacking a lot of other skills that would make them functional in a workplace or in a living situation. They struggle with independent living. They struggle with time management, executive functioning. So I think we're doing a huge disservice at the high school level. So I just wanted to point that out, but we're also not capturing them. So I feel like they at least need to be captured, even if we're not going to offer services. If we could add that to data collection.
Do you want to have 3 recommendations around data collection and have 1 to improve the tracking in the K-12 and transition, 1 tracking at that higher education coordinating board is tracking, and then another one that calls for the legislative analysis?
Yes.
Is that what you just said, Beth? I'm just trying to write notes. No, you're still.
What is your recommendation, Jackie, for that issue, for the K-12 data tracking?
I mean, I don't know if we can do it, but I feel like we should probably at least track when students with autism are denied autism services, or it's like there should be some sort of like 504 ADHD was acknowledged, autism diagnosis presented, but not served, or so. I don't know how, I have no idea how to do that. And if there's legal repercussions for the schools to say, we see they have autism, but we're not giving them services, because that's what's really happening. People are coming in with a professional diagnosis from a psychiatrist or a neuropsych eval, and it's being dismissed because mostly because these are smart, well articulate people, and they're being told they don't meet the educational need, but then they're missing all the soft skills to be functional. So I honestly don't know how to capture that or what the technicalities would be, but I feel like it's something to acknowledge because it's hugely skewing.
That's because they're getting really good grades.
Yes.
Well, I mean, what it likely means, is special education determinations is a 2-pronged test, right? It likely means that they're not, the ARD committee is making the decision that, or the evaluation committee is making the decision that the student isn't demonstrating needs to the second prong. The first prong is like, yes, the child has a disability. And the second prong being, is that disability adversely impacting performance or access to their education, which requires specialized service or instruction. When the answer to that is no, that's when they should consider a 504 plan or accommodations and things like that. But what I can say too is, like, at the agency, like, we track evaluations and we track eligibilities, but if a student is evaluated or goes through an evaluation committee and ultimately is not found eligible, like, the agency has no knowledge of what was potentially being evaluated for or considered. That data is never like reported to the state. That would, yeah, I don't, there's a lot of questions that make me wonder how we would even begin to start to gather that data because, you know, the committee may not even, in some instances, may not even know what disability could have been considered or what was driving it. You know, obviously when there's a medical diagnosis, it might be a little different, but just giving context to some of the challenges in that. And again, we don't have any mechanism or authority right now to gather that data.
Yeah, I do think there should be some sort of mechanism, especially when people come in with an autism evaluation from a psychiatrist or a neuropsych eval or something like that. I feel like it needs to be like we can't base our report and our data when we know there's like a huge number of kids not identified. We talk about it all the time in our public policy special education meetings, like it's the level 1 students in high school. And sometimes parents don't want to have them, or they reduce their, like the last couple of years, they reduced down their accommodations, or they switched them to a 504 or lesser accommodations in order to get them ready. So for college. So it's, anyway, it's an uncaptured group.
Linda, I'm taking notes. And I'm getting the notes from the chat.
Okay, good, because on our end, this thing has started on its own 5 or 6 times, so we don't even have our full chat anymore. So thank you for all this good discussion. Can we agree that all of the suggestions and commitments stated today will be enacted? And can everybody go along with that? So, and then we'll be calling on you to tease out some of these things that you've stated in the last few minutes on the recommendations. Do you want to look at any more recommendations, or do you want to move on to our 5th thing on the agenda?
Linda, are we taking action on recommendations today, or is this just discussion?
Let me share my screen. This, we are taking actions on these recommendations.
If we are taking action on the recommendation, then if we're taking action, can I read the recommendations for the record, and then we can decide the action?
Sure. Okay.
I have
an unstable internet connection.
Is my internet unstable? Okay.
Yours is fine.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see this list because mine's going.
We're seeing the K to 12 list.
I'm not sure that I'm going off of the document that Cheryl sent this morning, so I can just read them and I can put them in the chat in a minute if we need to. Or if that's easier, I'll just put them in. I don't know that everybody can see the chat, but based on our conversations, we have one recommendation that will be related to K-12 tracking and the denial of services and level 1 discussion that we just had. A second one would be to increase reliability and validity of data that is tracked and reported by the Higher Education Coordinating Board. Then there'll be another recommendation about the legislature exploring reporting requirements and how that might be improved. There is a recommendation to promote innovations and evidence-based programs for students in K-12, and that comes from the section in this report that describes examples of best practices for students, communication, recruitment and retention of educators with expertise, things like that. Then there is a recommendation to engage in appropriate planning and preparation for post-secondary programs, and that is encouraging students to take academic and career-focused classes that reflect their interest, and making sure that students have access to advanced coursework, dual credit, and other pathways during K-12 or 18 plus that will make them a good candidate for post-secondary programs. I'm just going to keep going until someone jumps in.
Linda asked if you can share your screen. Sorry, she typed it in the chat.
Okay.
You have the recommendations, I think.
I can also, like I said, I can take that. Hold on. Is it this one? Sorry, I'm just trying to sorry, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to show it. Let me share. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yes.
And does it move when I'm scrolling?
Yes.
Okay, so there is the K-12 tracking that we just talked about, increased reliability within HECB. I'll have to fix this, some recommendations for the legislature to establish clear reporting and data requirements. So I'll consolidate that language. And promote innovations for evidence-based programs. That was one of the recommendation, or that was one in the Senate Bill 55. And so this is just a short summary of some best practices that were included earlier in the report. This one, engage in appropriate planning for post-secondary programs. And again, that is the vocational training, the coursework, the 18 plus programs, bridge programs, and things like that for students. This one, build on evidence-based practices that promote successful student outcomes. So the one prior to this was best practices in K-12. This is the best practices from higher education that came from the survey that this group conducted. And these are programs. There's a list here of things like remote learning and certified coaching and some other modeling tools, things that were discussed earlier in the report based on those surveys. There is a recommendation here to expand peer-to-peer programs in post-secondary education that especially when you're in post-secondary and you either did not receive an autism diagnosis in your lifetime already, or you are relying on self-report, that some peers may be able to help folks get to the right place at their post-secondary institution to receive supports. I think there's just two more. Consider navigators for funding and financial aid options to help students with autism and IDD to find the right resource. And those resources are listed in detail earlier in the report. And then there's a recommendation here to establish state-funded scholarships. And this is echoing a recommendation that was made by the Higher Education Coordinating Board in a report in 2024.
Can I ask where the navigators recommendation originated from, if anyone on this call knows?
I think it came up through the council, some discussions that we've had as a council. This was also, there's a similar recommendation that is also in that 2024 Higher Education Coordinating Report, trying to create some more resources and information for students and families.
Gotcha.
But again, these are all open for discussion and wordsmithing. So those are the recommendations.
Beth, I really like the developing the self-advocacy in high school. I think before you're thrown into college on 504, you need to have had a lot of experience advocating for yourself, not with your parent helping, but you actually trying it on your own in high school. And I'm glad to see that it's in there to develop it in high school.
One of my recommendations related to how we present these recommendations is to put established state-funded scholarships before considering navigators. I think that our data team had significant issues trying to find disability-related scholarships, especially for non-degree seeking students. And so that was a significant barrier for us. And I think that that should be in tandem with navigators. You know, it's difficult for families to navigate what financial aid options exist and what scholarships exist. But I think that one of the key things is promoting more of those to exist. And a state-funded scholarship would do that. So
That would be good.
Can I also suggest that when we're trying to make that information available and we're saying THECB can help, is it something we could tell parents during our meetings or students and parents, families during our meetings so they know that, like, we have so many people that don't know, like, Texas Workforce even exists. I don't think families know about THECB and they wouldn't probably go out seeking that information, but almost all of them are having some sort of ARD or 504 meeting, presumably. I just wondered if there's another way we could get them that info, or at least know the services are going to be available.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also ask if we can tease out some clarity related to the recommendation on engaging in appropriate planning and preparation for post-secondary programs. It starts with students should be encouraged, but it doesn't say who would do the encouraging or preparing. So I think being very clear as to who we're talking about. I assume that we're talking about school staff, IEP team members, VR counselors, and folks that are actively working with students to prepare them for post-secondary education would be helpful for the report.
Okay. Thank you. So, is everybody in unison about using these recommendations? Okay. Well, do we need a vote or can we move on?
Do you
to
need
our
a
presenter?
motion for action? Or is this consensus?
Okay.
If there's no opposition, we can do consent.
Okay, if there's no opposition, we'll just do consent and not take individual votes. Do we have any opposition to what we agreed to do to finish this report? Okay. Well, in that case, it is my pleasure to introduce Melinda Paninsky from Texas Workforce Commission. And on my slides, we have what the issue is. I don't have that slide in front of me right now, but some students who normally get CTP funding received letters from Texas Workforce Commission that funding has been paused until Workforce Commission explores some things. So it's sort of open-ended. And so we're hoping that Texas Workforce Commission could shed a little bit of light on it, please. Let us know if there's more to know at this point. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce Melinda Paninsky to talk about IDD and CTPs and even the Building Better Futures program.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, committee. Thank you so much for having me. And Laura is sorry she couldn't be here to speak on behalf. She had a prior commitment. I may have been vacation. I don't know. Anyways, thank you all for having us. And yes, Linda, definitely want to make sure that we communicate clearly the expectation. So a letter did go out to customers who were currently receiving support services from vocational rehabilitation for the CTPs on their IEP, IPE. Oh, see, you guys were talking IEPs all morning, and now I'm in that world. IPE, Individual Plan for Employment with VR Services, identified those students who currently have it on their plan will continue to get that service. We're not ending a service for someone that already has that service on their plan. The pause is to only allow for the proper procurement process for this particular service. It is not the normal educational program of our 4-year or 2-year institutions. And so we have to go through our procurement process to get the right process in place. So it's literally just a pause, not ending a service that has already started for someone. Pause meaning we're not making any new referrals for students to have it on their IPE. Ones who had it on their IPE continue to get that service until it's no longer needed or they've graduated from the program, whatever them and their counselor deems appropriate. So I hope that clarifies the information, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you all might have.
I'm wondering if for the few letters that went out, was it just for people that were during the application process and it was just saying we're pausing the applications?
So I'm not, I don't know all of the students that got the letter. I was a part of putting the letter together. And the intent was to notify students who were currently receiving it to say, hey, you may have heard we're pausing this particular service. It's not going to affect you if you already have this on your plan. We just were informing them in case they heard from other entities or other individuals who were wanting to go into that program that they weren't going to get that service at this time. Does that help, Linda?
Okay. Yes, very much. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So if it's on their plan, their IPE, their individual plan for employment, if it's listed as a service, we will honor that service for sure. We are just not making any new referrals. We're pausing that right now. Hopefully, we actually, they've already been meeting and discussing it. It didn't just start. For several months now, they've been meeting with procurement to try and figure out a contract, an RFP. Like, they're not exactly sure the right process, but they know this service is something that individuals can benefit from. And so they're looking at the right procurement process.
Sorry, can I ask a question? So
Yeah.
is this impacting students now students with disabilities that just graduated from high school? Are they unable to start school this fall because of the lack of support services?
Well, not school in general. This is just the CTP programs.
Right. So I mean, sorry, are they unable to start those programs now?
If they had it on their plan already before July 1 or 2, when the letter went out, then yes, they can still start the program.
Okay,
and
so
I would
anyone
think
that was
it,
sort of late is not able to start.
right. I mean, we did not send the letter out till July 1st or 2nd. I apologize. I don't remember the exact day. It was one of those two. So if someone had, and I would think that if someone just graduated and they were hoping to start in the fall, they should have it on their plan, or at least making preparations for going. So yeah.
I have a question. How do students get it on their plan in the first place? Is it an option? Is there like a drop-down menu that, this is my plan and CTP is on that?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice as a counselor if I just had a drop-down list for all services? No,
Right.
there's not a drop-down. It's literally because all of our services are very individualized. So there's not a drop-down for any particular service. It's meeting with that individual, especially if they've come from the high school setting. I love what you had said earlier about students even knowing about vocational rehabilitation services. They should be invited. It's part of the transition plan to have VR at the table so that families can hear about those services. So we definitely support and want them to hear about the services as well. So when they're working with that individual, through the services they've gotten from school, through any type of assessments and career planning, is this program a CTP or a certificate program or a 4-year program, a 2-year program? Is that needed for you to obtain your vocational goal of what that is today? So that's how services are determined. What is your vocational goal and what services do you need to obtain that vocational goal?
And I'm sorry, I do run a program, and so I have lots of personal stories and that my students bring. What if
Sure.
a student doesn't know what their exact future holds and they change their mind after that period?
Yeah.
You know, where's the
Yeah.
flexibility and adaptability for students who don't even know about these programs till 2 years after they've done that?
Yeah, that's what a plan amendment is for. We can certainly amend plans. We can change vocational goals. The idea is that we want to help someone launch into their future, whatever that is. And it might change for someone. They might start out with our services and obtain X employment opportunity, whatever that is. And in a few years, they recognize, yeah, this isn't really working for me, or I need to do something different. They can come back into our program. We're not a one and done program. We're not a long-term program, meaning, we do have to have a closure once someone is employed and because of the services they've received, but they can come back into the program to either gain employment if they've lost it, or to advance in employment, advance into something that they maybe got. A lot of high school students, when they're graduating, whether they have a disability or not, I know even a student, I have a disability. When I graduated from high school, I had a particular goal in mind. I certainly changed that after a couple of years when I learned that wasn't going to help me be successful in my life. Changed my plan. That's a normal thing that happens, and we know that happens. I go into cases sometimes and I can see a bunch of amendment plans listed. So certainly that can happen.
So may I ask one more question, and then I'll stop hogging this. How are your employment counselors informed about CTP programs? Are they well educated so it's like not a surprise when students come to them?
Yeah, so our transition vocational rehabilitation counselors or general caseloads vocational rehabilitation counselor program staff, the teams that, I don't know anyone who hasn't heard about one of those programs, to be honest. The staff that I've interacted with, I know through our transition team, they talk about it with the transition counselors when they're providing training and information. We have information about them and that's sent out to the staff for sure. And obviously that's part of the aligning procurement process. If we have it as an outlined, clear process as to what we provide, staff definitely are aware of that because it's in our procurement processes. They see the contract, they see the RFP, they see whatever it is. That actually makes it more visible to everyone.
Okay, and I lied. One more quick question. So when is your timeline, do you think, for reinstating, like for starting up again for the new folks coming in? We are in the process of getting our CTP application completed, so,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. I would love to give you a timeline. Unfortunately, I'm not we are a state agency. Our procurement process is really beyond the VR program. VR has already been meeting with procurement. They've already been talking. They've already had conversations the last few months about it. Once they determine the actual procurement process, which I would imagine would happen in the next couple of month or two at the latest, then begins the procurement process, whatever that is. Some of our contracts take 9 months to obtain because of the terms and conditions and the various things that have to be outlined in those contracts.
Thank you.
Sure.
This is Sue Maresca. May I ask a
Sabrina's
question?
hand has been up, and that'll need to be our last question. Is that okay?
Did you say yes?
Sabrina?
Hello?
I think she said Sabrina's hand has been up, and I understand you are on the phone
okay,
and you don't
okay.
have an ability to raise your hand, but
I'm sorry.
let's see
Or see
let-
anything, right?
let's see if Sabrina's question maybe answers yours. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, Melinda. Thank you for being here and chatting about this issue.
Sure.
This is an issue that the Arc of Texas is incredibly concerned about.
Yeah.
we have already gotten communications from some of our institution of higher education partners that this is already causing students that have already gone to orientation, plan to come and attend a CTP in the fall, drop out because they are not getting this sponsorship. And that's incredibly concerning for us as an organization. It's having a disparate impact specifically for students that don't have the financial means to be able to attend these programs without support from TWC, leaving only students that are in a position of having that extra wealth to be able to attend these programs to attend. I can say already at UNT's LFR program, I know that Dr. Brenda Barrio isn't on, but she's already shared that at least 3 of her students that attended orientation and were set to attend will no longer be attending this fall due to this decision. And so my question, and I have many, is related to how I know that you shared that you believe that this halt will take anywhere between 1 and 9 months, but that is a procurement issue, is what you had shared. But how is this impacting students that had been working with their VR counselor to put it on their IPE and hadn't had that finalized before July 1st? I think that a lot of students were working with their counselors to put that on. As you mentioned, there's not a drop down where a student can log onto their account and say, I'm putting CTP on my IPE. That's obviously a process that works with each VR counselor. We know that VR counselors have very large caseloads. And so for students that were in the process of getting that CTP on their IPE, how is that being impacted?
I have a partial answer for that. I don't have the full answer to your question. I'll have to definitely look into that and see if those students have been reported to us. I would hope that if someone had attended orientation and was ready to attend, that they didn't start that process without having assurance that it was something TWC was going to support them in. Because just because it's a program offer doesn't mean it's appropriate for everyone. It is an individual plan. So that's part of the process. So, and we know people kind of jump the gun sometimes and get engaged in a service before it's really been authorized. So in part, that's part of the issue that I can't address, because I would hope that plan was already written to show that service if somebody went to an orientation and was ready to attend in person, that they knew for sure TWC was going to support them in that. Because for sure, if it was on their plan, TWC continues to support them in that program. They're not pulling services from anyone. The fact that, yes, there are large caseloads, you're right. I mean, maybe there was a scheduling issue and they didn't get in with a counselor. And we could certainly investigate some of that just to see if, like, an appointment was made for July 3rd or something, or July 7th, that to put that on their plan. I haven't heard of that happening, but we can certainly look into that.
Yeah. And our concern isn't necessarily with students that are in year 2 or 3 of their CTP program, or it was already on their IPE because they were really eager beavers and put this in, January or February, which I definitely have those stories. But our concern is with students that are supposed to be starting this fall. They definitely were not under the impression that the rug was going to be pulled out from under them and that they were not going to be having access to this support or sponsorship. And I have a really big concern as to how this is going to be impacting students that are supposed to be starting this fall.
Sure. Well, and I would say that I hope, again, that no one thought the rug was being pulled out from under them. If it was a planned service, then they got the service. If it wasn't a planned service, then we're not pulling away something that was already promised. I hope that's clear. I don't want anyone to think that we're pulling the rug out from anyone who had a service on their IPE.
Can I just say,
that
I
isn't
think
the case.
that's, sorry, I just want to add, I'm sure that is probably the intention not to pull the rug out, but as someone who also has a student with a disability in college right now, and we've been in 4 different programs, we've worked directly with Texas Workforce for many years now. We've had 4 or 5 counselors in 4 years. We've gone for 6 months not knowing that our counselor actually left. No one told us. We've had multiple issues trying to contact and work with Texas Workforce, so much so I had to get Disability Rights Texas involved twice. And I'm a parent that is, I'm executive director at Autism Society of Texas. I have a lot of bandwidth and resources to do this stuff, but it's almost like my side gig trying to get my son services. And right now I actually can't, services I fought for 18 months. Right now, I can't get a hold of my TWC counselors, my son's counselor, to get them for this fall. So, so I am concerned that when people have had these meetings with their voc rehab counselor in February or March, and then they can't get a hold of them, or they don't meet for 2 or 3 months, and they are expecting go, and they've already paid, or and they're signed up, and they're, you know, or they've paid for like orientation, like Sabrina says, you talk in good faith with your TWC counselor about a program, and you expect you've already discussed it. And it's like, it may not be their fault that they haven't met and that it's not in the IPE. So I do find it really concerning as well. And I think it's probably extremely, I know it's extremely difficult for those families who anticipated that funding and are not getting to go this fall. It's extremely disruptive and upsetting. So I just wanted to kind of echo what Sabrina said.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. If it was the fault of scheduling or something that happened, that's something certainly that would be looked into. I can't make any promises on that, but that is a different issue for sure. I was only referencing the individuals who were planning but hadn't really communicated with TWC, because I know some of those cases have happened also. Like, well, we thought we were going to get TWC support, and it's like, well, you have to have it on your plan before it can really happen. But if it's a delay on the fact of, yes, there is counselor turnover, and by all means, if you're not getting something from a counselor, please feel free to email me on the side, and I'd be happy to get you in contact with someone or their supervisor management. That should not be the case. I know that happens. But we definitely want to, as much as we can from the state office perspective, try and address that and open up lines of communication better for sure.
Thank you.
I have a process question, if that's okay. I know we're running low on time, but what does procurement look like for this service previous, and why is a new procurement process needing to be explored in this moment?
Sure. Well, without getting into the weeds, because I'm definitely not a procurement person, but it's not the traditional, what we have universities set up as a degree program. We have them, that's how they're set up in our procurement process. Not all of the CTP programs offer a degree or certificate program. So not all of them are employment related. So there's look into how do we support the pieces of the program that are employment related. That's about as much as I can tell you. There's details in procurement that are well beyond me. I don't know. I know it's tied to the non-degree seeking part for sure.
So TWC's read is that some of the services that in the CTP program that students are receiving or going through is not employment related?
I can't speak to that. It's the degree, walking out with a degree, a non-degree, a certificate, that type of thing. That's how the universities are set up in our current procurement system and the purchasing of the service. So this being a program that looks differently needs to have its own procurement process tied away from it's listed as an academic program currently in our procurement process. So a degree seeking academic program.
So is this halt expected to also exist for non-CTP IDD specific programs like our Texas A&M PATHS program, which is not traditional degree seeking, like our ACC STEPS and other IDD specific programs that aren't degree seeking?
I'm pretty sure PATHS has its own procurement process right now already. So I think some of those do. So I apologize, I can't give you a specific, but I want it because those have been around a lot longer too. And I know when PATHS started, they were looking at a different procurement process for it.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello?
Nina?
Yeah, thank you, Melinda, for your time. I think, and I appreciate Sabrina and others expressing all of their concerns. I agree. And I think Sabrina might have touched on a little bit of my question. I'm just wondering how to prepare families and individuals with disabilities about their financial support, you know, and the services, how is it going to look different now from the CTPs, how TWC has been currently supporting them until after the program. So you touched on that a little bit, but are we expecting that there may be less financial support now if they're going to a CTP approved program?
I really can't speak to that because that's what the procurement process is about. I'll be honest. That's part of the discussion that's going on is what does the funding look like for it? Yeah, I can't speak to that, and hopefully in the future there can be more given to you guys about that. But because it's just been in the process of what does it need to look like? Is it going to be an individual contract, an RFP that's put out? How is the procurement going to look? They've been looking at those pieces first, and then I think it'll probably look different for each university, each college. It'll be tied to their program, not a blanket CTP program. I can't promise that, but that's my guess because the programs all do have a little different components to them from my understanding. And so I think it's going to be kind of individualized toward the program.
Whoops, sorry, one follow-up question. Will this be then posted on the website or just sent to existing CTP programs, or how can we expect to be informed about the process when it's decided upon?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think certainly because it will be some sort of a contract, whether it's an RFP or contract with the CTP programs, they will definitely know. They will be a part of the process. It won't just be decided, they will be in the know of what's happening. So they will for sure know. And then we will share that information with all of our counselors that are all of our counselors, whether they're supporting CTPs now or not.
And then I have
you.
one follow-up
Hello?
question. I apologize. I know that you had mentioned that for students that fell in this category of they were hoping to attend this fall. And Jackie, I think, beautifully illustrated some of the issues that happen whenever families try to get a service on their IPE, and that doesn't happen for a variety of reasons. For students that fall in this category that had been talking in good faith with their VR counselors about putting this on their IPE and it wasn't finalized before the July 1st notification, what should students that fall into this category do?
I think just staying in communication with their counselor, and any changes that are made are going to happen through leadership. I'll certainly talk to our director about that and see if those conversations are happening at the local level. And I would say their counselor is who they need to communicate with, and their counselors are definitely letting our leadership know. We are staying in constant communication. We see and hear the different things that are going on, the concerns, and definitely understand the concerns. That's why it's a pause. We're not ending and cutting a service, and it does kind of change things for some people. We do know, if I'm not mistaken, the CTP programs, you do receive Pell Grant for them also. So Pell Grants are available, and we know that doesn't cover tuition. We can't control the cost of programs, but creating access and making things affordable by being a Pell Grant program does definitely help. So that being allowed is definitely a key piece, so that there's not just one funding source, one benefit, comparable benefit supporting students in those programs.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about.
Morask has been patiently waiting. Should we call on Sue?
Hello? Oh.
Yeah, hi, Sue.
Morask? Oh,
Hello?
you were trying to talk earlier, so we're wondering if you still
Yes,
have a
because I
question.
don't have any way to raise my hand. I'm on the phone only. Unfortunately, my Zoom wasn't working today.
Right.
I'll be very, very quick. Okay. We've been around for 35 years. One of the first in the nation, first in Texas. And, the CTP, I was involved when CTPs were first created way back before anyone in Texas even was a CTP. The CTP was meant really, I used to talk to TWC counselors all the way up to Austin for years about when CTPs first came out, because that whole process was a way for colleges and universities that had programs serving students with IDD that were non-credit where they could get financial aid. So right. TWC was happy and excited when we finally got CTP approval, because now TWC doesn't have to pay as much for our class. In most cases, we have right. very few TWC counselors now that are funding our students because they're getting Pell Grants. But there are some, there's a elective class that, they still fund, or let's say a student doesn't get financial aid, because sometimes that happens. The ones that don't get the financial aid because of their expected whatever income equivalent, that calculation that shows what they will fund for Pell then they go to their TWC counselor and then they will fund it. So they are applying for their Pell Grant for FAFSA. And so we have a lot less students now in our program at Houston Community College that are getting TWC to pay. But TWC pays for a lot of other things, not just tuition. You know, the TWC having there's a benefit to have a TWC VR counselor, whether they pay for tuition or not. And TWC has been funding our program since you all were TRC, okay?
Yeah.
All the way
Yeah.
from Austin down to Houston. TRC,
I remember that
DARS,
program.
TWC. And we are
Mhm.
not an academic program. We are a workforce program in every sense of the word. We have a full-time employment director. We have internships. We have employer partners. We have micro-credentials. So, you know, our students, you know, they are going into career pathways. They are getting employment. So it's not an academic program, and it's not a, we're not an academic program at all. However, I understand if, you know, when we became a CTP, it was really so that the students could now access Pell Grants. That was the purpose. We didn't change our program. It's not a new program that we became a CTP. We're still the same program. We've gotten a STAR Award twice. So I'm just letting you know that, okay? The other thing I wanted to say is that someone from Austin, 2 different people from Austin spoke to me a few weeks ago because we did not get a letter, but they were concerned because they didn't know whether we were going to be included or not. And then someone told me, no, that Houston Community College is not included in this decision, but we never got a letter either way, okay? And so if I, you know, now I've got students just like the previous speakers, you know, that have met, the previous council members that have mentioned, you know, their students are now being told by their counselors that they can't fund them, these brand new students coming in, and we're getting the same feedback. So I called yesterday to speak to someone, but I guess I need to find out who I need to speak to because they told me, you know, I should be getting a letter, that we should be getting a letter explaining, but we have not gotten a letter. But I was told by 2 different people that we were not included. But then again, we are a CTP. So yes, that would make sense. If you want to be consistent, you're not going to say, oh, well, we're going to halt CTPs, but we're not going to halt Houston Community College Vats Academy. As much as we would love to have that, it doesn't seem fair. But it doesn't seem fair either when we've been funded by your agency for all of these years, our students have been. And now just because we're a CTP, which is actually relieving you all from spending as much money, is now being halted because they need to look, you know, at the policy, whatever has to be made about CTPs overall. So I understand exactly what's going on. So I see both sides. I understand. But it is going to be affecting students, not in a good way. I mean, there's a lot of students and parents now at the last minute when school is about to start who are you know, maybe they've already been told that they can't get a Pell Grant. You know, they've applied, they didn't get it, or they didn't get enough. Now they got to try to find funding. And of course, we're going to, you know, we're going to go ahead and try to see what we can do to find scholarships because since we've been around so many years, we have more scholarships from the foundation, whatever we can do. But our program is only $259 a class.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame. But, you know, the parents, the ones, you know, we've got some that it's not going to bother them at all. And then we've got, you know, some locations that are in areas where parents are more economically challenged and you know, they should be able to get financial aid, but sometimes they don't for whatever reason. Maybe there's 2 incomes in the family. I don't know, but they still are very needy. And now they're being told they're not going to be getting this. And I was told that we were going to get notification, which we have not received. And then also, I was told that, you know, until we get notification, we shouldn't worry about it. But I'm already getting students and parents and counselors that have already said, because they got that letter that said no CTPs that they cannot fund those students. And so now they're already being told, some of these new students coming in. And originally I was told that it wasn't going to affect us. So I guess I would just like to get clarification from somebody because we have not gotten clarification. We have never received a letter. I've only known about it because the person was nice enough to share it with me.
We're going to have to wrap up.
So really quick, Linda, if I could just address her question.
But I know that there were some more questions.
Okay.
Linda?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't interrupt. So you're right. I did not see VAST on the list either. So I will check into that and in some way make sure that you guys get that information. And it may be because if I'm not mistaken, we're recently a CTP program and it's not a residential program. I don't know all the specifics as to why, but you're right. You guys were not on the list. So I will check into that for sure.
Thank you, because the
I
counselors
know
in the
we had some
local
more
level need to
questions.
know, right?
Melinda, could we have a meeting with you?
Yeah, sure. And
That
honestly,
might be a better way to do it. I think Sabrina's still
yeah, happy to. And I actually, I'm filling in. I mean, I know all the stuff that's going on, and I know procurement wise, we don't have answers yet, but definitely would suggest that Laura Villarreal, her and her manager Aaron Wilder be a part of that conversation. I'm happy to be also. But I definitely want the transition team because they're the ones that are like walking in this space with procurement and they know more about what's been done. So
Thank you so much for coming.
no
We
problem.
put you on the spot because
Okay.
you're representing a whole agency in this. And we thank you very, very much. And I think maybe I'll generate a call with a couple of people. And you, in case there still are some unanswered questions. And our next thing on the agenda was announcements and updates. I was just gonna talk about the bills, a couple of bills that passed, but they're actually in our document and we can all see them there. Does anybody have anything else they want to say, or may we adjourn this today? Would you like to have do we have our next meeting in 3 months? Or do we need to have another one about this?
You mean
I
another one
believe
about
we
this
have
topic or
enough to
TWC?
finish the report, right? Jackie, did you say something?
Oh, I was just trying to clarify if you meant, do we need to have another meeting about our report or a meeting about TWC or both?
So I'm looking at the folks here in the room and it looks like we are going to proceed with the report and have it in probably by the end of next week. And with all the details that have been discussed today, so we may meet in 3 months instead. Would you like to continue on a Friday, 3 months from now?
Yes, that works for me.
It needs to be in November. Okay, so we're hearing that the first Friday in November might be a better date than October. Would that be all right with you all?
Works for me.
Okay. October 24th or November 7th. Anybody have a conflict?
This is Christine Price. I have no conflicts.
Okay. Should we go with the earlier one? In order to get 4 year, do we need to be on the earlier side or?
We can, the next meeting would also, be time to consider, elections as
Okay.
well.
Okay,
Any interest?
all right.
I have a quick
let's-
question. I'm sorry, Linda.
Yes.
Just a quick question. I know someone who would like to be on this committee. Should I recommend them to someone? Who would I talk to? Waylon or Cheryl or you or?
Linda and Cheryl.
Cheryl.
Okay, yeah, they've just been
Cheryl.
asking me for a long time and they're like, I want to do it. And I'm like, I'll try to connect you.
Some bylaws that committees I'm on always has an election committee established, but I don't believe we have that in our bylaws. I think we just, THECB just facilitates.
Please note though, like our captions in preparation for October's board meeting, it begins like August 1. So materials and things are starting to flow for routing. And so if there's any changes to the membership list, At this time, or new members, it'll be great to have it within the next week, or two at the most.
Sure,
That
I'll
way
get
we
it
can
right out.
include it and make those changes at the October's board meeting. Because that's when our new membership will be effective for the recent changes that we've had in the last quarter.
Are we deciding on October?
For what?
The next meeting? Okay.
Since anybody's closed.
Okay. We say that 24 and 27.
24th of November.
Okay. With a show of hands. Who can come October 24th? Oh, I don't know, I just lost Sue. Usually the internet is not like this here. Cheryl, why don't you,
It's hard to see.
I'm not back yet. Do you wanna, why don't you just?
Can anybody not make it October 24th? Please say, or put it in the chat. Or November 7th. If any date is a conflict, just let us know, and then we can check on our end, but
November
Nina's
7th.
His hand is up.
Marissa, November 7th?
Well, that's for Beth and I. That's our
One in the chat.
our council meeting is on the 7th.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
Christina is 10/24.
Did two people say they can't make November 7th?
Same bet.
And
So
only
right now
one
the
person
24th?
can't make the 24th.
Yeah. Someone with the 24th at this time, and
Okay, okay. Do we need a motion to decide on that date? Okay, so our next meeting will be on October 24th on Friday at 10 o'clock. And may I have a motion to close?
This is Christine Price. I motion to close.
This is Nina Zuna. I
Christine Price
second.
motions to close. Do we have a second?
Nina Zuna, I second.
Okay, I want to thank you guys so much. This was a tougher than usual meeting to sort out all this data. And I loved all the input, and we will try to honor everything that was said. And we shall see you in 3 months. Seeing no objections, the motion passes. And we are closing at 12:22 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Waylon, you can stop the recording.